You too. Yeah.
You guys good in the back? Good? All right. Coach,
Everybody ready to go here?
yes, sir. Whenever you're ready.
Is it cold enough in here for you? Already told Rick, giving you a little more time today. Okay, so no complaints. It's good to be back. We, quite a few things to talk about. I know you guys got quite a few questions here. I do think we've added some really good players to our team since the last time we were in front of you, and certainly a lot of staff changes and new hires to discuss here. But good group. Nobody to report in terms of signing today, but I know you'll have questions about a couple high school players and then obviously a handful of transfers. But off to a good start. Almost close to being done with phase one, and staff will be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we'll kind of turn the page to phase two on Monday. So a lot of questions here. Let's get straight to it. What do we got?
How much, we hear all the stuff about NIL. How much money is it going to take to compete at this level? I mean, is that going to be a problem at Florida?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think, I feel if I could, the amount of time and effort and energy that's been put into creating the system that we have in place now, I think probably took us about 18 months to kind of get a pulse on the landscape, what it would require to be competitive, but more importantly, kind of what is our approach going to be relative to who we want to be, the caliber of player that we need to compete, but more importantly, the type of people that you want to attract to your program. I think to some degree, the way that we've structured this thing, I think we are built to be sustainable, repeatable. Can't compliment Florida Victorious enough in terms of the leadership and then the collaboration, right? I think there's a lot of people that have invested a ton of time and resources. So we have great resources here. That's no secret. I mean, I think we have an incredible alumni network. We continue to produce quality alumni. This place has never been hurting for resources. I think more importantly is the strategy behind it, how it's constructed. What are you using NIL for? I think I'm proud of the service-oriented work that we do. I'm proud of the financial literacy piece that's required as a result of the NIL opportunities that our players have. And really, all 21 sports at the University of Florida. I think we have a vehicle that can execute in that space, and that's going to benefit all sports, not just football.
Is there an amount of money, though, that the University of Florida needs to compete with Alabama, with Georgia, and these others?
I think that each individual situation, I think it's very fluid. And I would say, much like the market, might have been something yesterday and then maybe it changed today, to some degree. So I think each cycle, the market changes, if that makes sense. I think we've seen an evolution. I mean, we're talking about drastic change every 6 months since I've been the coach here, if that makes sense. So took us a little bit of time there to get in position, but I think we've got, I don't know that there's a number. I think that number grows every 6 months, in my opinion.
Changes, some, more forward-facing than others. I mean, I'm sure you'll go through many of them. But defensively, what would, there was a good bet. What was kind of the tipping point there?
Yeah, no, I think part of the evaluation was just that we need to play better on that side of the ball. And I think we go through a process to evaluate what we need to do better. Sometimes that's new leadership, a new voice, a new teacher, a different approach in recruiting, whatever the case may be. And I think we were able to answer some of those things. And then Jay got a chance to be a coordinator again, so we went and we were able to get one of the better defensive coaches in the country back on our staff. So, I think we've done well. So far, so good. I think we went through a very extensive process to land where we landed with Will Harris and Gerald Chapman, both of which I think have proven to be what we thought they were. Really good teachers. I think they've got character. I do think they have passion for people. They have care for the player, independent of the game. Great families, and I think pedigree, right? They've been around good coaching. They know what it looks like. They've coached at the highest level. They've coached at the Power 5 level. I think they've done a good job connecting with the staff and the players so far.
I have a relationship, past. How's that collaboration going to work?
Yeah, it's been
plays and doing all that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, you think about Ron Roberts and what he brings to the table. Veteran coach, been a head coach, been a coordinator, play caller. Austin and him, there's a mentor type relationship there. And a ton of respect, mutual respect on both sides. So I think we get the wisdom, this system, and there's a number of coaches. You guys obviously will write the story at some point, but this guy's mentored 1 million defensive coaches in his career, some of which are coordinator play callers in the NFL and college football. So I think it's a positive because I think the system that we run, Ron started that system at Louisiana the first 2 years we were there, kind of got it up and running, and then it's evolved. And the guys that have been running it worked for him in the past, right? So I think whether that was Patrick Toney, who took over, who's now in the National Football League, or Austin, Jay Bateman's in that tree of coaches. So I think we get, they call him the OG, the Godfather, whatever you want to call him, right? We get him back in the building, and he's going to make us better, and he'll make the players better. His guys have always been productive, the guys that he coaches and the units that he coaches. So there's a track record of playing really good defense, and we're fortunate to have him.
On that, I don't think executive head coach is a title I've seen before. Are there any specific new duties with that, or can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, head coach for the defense, basically a guy who oversees, that side of the ball to some degree. Austin obviously is the coordinator, calls the plays and runs the unit meetings, but we're getting a guy who can coach the coaches, who can approve the installation, the game plans, that really can get the best of that side of the ball. Essentially, he's the head coach of the defense to some degree, So, and I think the coordinator relationship there is one that's, those guys they're loving life right now, So, they're both ball guys, and let me say, we've got Mike Peterson in that room, Will Harris in that room, Gerald Chapman in that room. We promoted Callie James, who's a graduate assistant. He's kind of the assistant defensive line coach and is going to help us with the hybrid players. It's a good room, and I think they're in a good place. They're excited to work together.
Mark Robinson, what do you envision him doing and his role being, and is that kind of maybe the landscape of where we're at, the ever-changing landscape that you needed that guy to maybe take something off your plate?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think there's an execution component to not only the recruitment process, but there's also kind of there's a new variable. If you want to use the word salary cap, you could use it. But to some degree, there's a ton of agent relations, parent relations, current roster relations. Not to mention the acquisition of talent and the big picture relative to how you put that whole puzzle together. It's not only 85 scholarship players, it's 50 walk-ons, it's how many mid-year slots do you have, what strategy do you take within each position, high school players, portal players. So he's got experience, I think, in the operations area, but he also was a part of kind of that collective operation at Texas A&M. So he'll work closely with the administration there in terms of making sure we're connecting the dots and going about things the right way.
Offensive changes, there's always a lot of noise about play calling and bringing in a new OC and all that. Can we take it that, there won't be any major change at this point? What tweaks have you made, and what was your thought process behind all that? Will you remain in the role that you have?
Yeah, we're in the process of defining those roles, is what I would say. I think we're working our way through that. I do think that there'll be different responsibilities to some degree. I think you'll see, we'll probably talk more specific about that in the future, but I do think, much like we made a hire in the NIL space, the chief of staff front office space with Mark Robinson, we made a hire in special teams, which I assume you ask. Really an effort to put the right things in place so that, the time is allocated for me in the right places. I think it's been a heck of a 2 years in terms of all the new things that come with the job. So offensively, I think that we may have different titles, responsibilities within that group of people. There could be an addition or two. We shuffled the deck a little bit in terms of those things, but ultimately we'll keep the same system and keep moving forward in that regard.
See, still making the play call. There won't be, like, last year's a big deal at A&M. They're bringing in Petrino, turning over the thing. You don't foresee something major like that. It's more just.
I think, ultimately we're not. Again, all that is to be determined, is what I would say. I think we've got time to figure those things out. But I don't see any major overhauls outside of just how we organize that group and how we operate in-house.
What have you seen over last year that makes you think that Russ Callaway could help you in that area?
Well, I've worked closely with him for a year. I think ultimately he's a guy that obviously is going to acquire more responsibility, and how we define that, I think will be we'll work our way through that, and I think ultimately Russ is a heck of a young coach, and much like me, he's worked on defense in the past as a young coach. He's called plays at different levels, played quarterback, has the leadership components, has the respect of the players. So Russ is a guy we certainly are excited about, and he definitely in the future will acquire more responsibility.
Are you relieved in some regard in terms of some things coming off your plate? A little help?
Yeah, I think more the way I would describe it more is like, you wake up and the systems are built. You don't necessarily feel like, man, we got a lot of work to do to create some type of process here to be competitive in that space. I think the landscape relative to NIL has consistently changed, and I think we're finally to a place where, like, okay, we have our method, we have our process, our system, we can execute, we can be competitive. I think there's a little bit more clarity out there in terms of what the opponent is doing and how they operate. And we feel great about our product and what we have to offer. Now, I do think the portal is another, I think it's hard to acquire players in the portal without the other to some degree. I think most coaches would tell you that. So early on, you may have wanted to make a lot of moves in the portal, but, maybe don't have the resources to do that. So I think we've evolved. We're able to recruit the elite player that everybody in the country wants. We're also able to play money ball a little bit, evaluate, find players with traits. And I think, I would say this is probably the best group of players that we've had since we've been here. So yeah, overall, I think those are the things that I think about. And those are the things that I look back, I'm looking at my notes from the previous 2 years, and I'm thinking about we've done quite a bit of work in that space. So
You've taken in 29 players through the transfer portal since you've been here. Right now, it's looking like you're going to have 14, maybe 15 guys who started their career someplace else starting in the fall. Are you changing your recruiting philosophy based on how the portal is evolving?
Well, I think we're doing what we need to do to field the next team to some degree. I mean, I think this is much like the old junior college model to some degree, where, okay, hey, here's the roster that we have. Here are the issues on the team. Here are the depth issues. Here's where we need immediate impact, and you try to go get those things answered. I think there's a number of examples of that, whether it's, when we first got here, we needed a running back, right? So Montrell Johnson came. We needed offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance. We needed a receiver, Ricky Pearsall. We needed a quarterback, Graham Mertz. There's some success stories there. There's others that I think are to be determined on our team. So I think it's just it's one team at a time to some degree. But I do think from a sustainability standpoint and just from a market value overall big picture, I think you got to draft your team, recruit your team, and then you answer questions with free agency, and that's one cycle at a time, right? So you spend the recruiting cycle recruiting high school players, you get to the end, the fluidity of your roster right before the portal, there's attrition, and then you got to fill those spots. So I think that it's much more complicated than it's ever been, but and that's one of the reasons why we've staffed this thing out the way we have. We've also made some changes in the personnel department. Jacob LaFrance is going to kind of take a leadership role and be the general manager. And then Nick McDonald's the DPP. Joe Hamilton's going to be the director of scouting and recruiting relations and handle the NFL side. We've created an underclassmen group. I think you're consistently recruiting 2 classes. We've also allocated some people towards the walk-on program as we continue to try to build that. So, from a walk-on perspective, I do think we are making progress. I think we've got 116 kids right now. That's the most we've had since we've been here at the mid-semester. So we're getting good players. We're retaining them. We need to continue to do that.
Speaking of Graham, readiness for spring for him, Shamar James, Cam Carroll, Justice Boone, all guys coming off surgery. Where are they, and will they take
Graham
action?
will definitely be ready to go. I think some of those others that you mentioned are to be determined. We'll give you more of an update when we get there, but Graham will be ready.
As far as looking at the portal and where you might have needs and addressing them, are there areas where you look at the spring window where you already know you're going to need to be more aggressive at certain positions, or is that still kind of a to-be-determined process?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I tell our administration, our investors. We plan as if we're going to need a player at every single position. I think from a personnel department standpoint, that's the approach we take in the fall and in the spring. No matter if we're deep at a position or not, we're always going to anticipate, because it can happen to you in a hurry, right? So I think we're always anticipating that we need one player at each position on our team.
You mentioned Mike Peterson from the last records update that we had gotten. He was one of 4 coaches with contracts expiring in January. Rob and Darnell and Jabbar as well. Can you confirm that the 4 of them will be returning this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we're in the process of that right as we speak here.
You can't delve into it too deeply, but Jaden Rashada, the NCAA investigation, you're among a few schools that are being looked at, and I know many more probably have issues. Was this kind of an inevitability, given the way this whole thing kind of came out of the gate, these kind of issues cropping up? And first off, what can you say about Jaden in that case, but also just kind of the inevitable nature given the lack of guidelines and unclear rules?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys know that we can't speak specifically. I mean, I think we've made a statement there. We'll refer to that. I do think college football right now is in a very unique space. It has been there's probably a little more sanity as we speak compared to maybe 18 months ago. I think we at least kind of understand what's required. But we need change. I think everybody knows that. It's great to see some of our leadership. You saw the SEC and the Big Ten kind of collaborating and creating a group. You know, I told the staff yesterday in the staff meeting at 7:45, when I ride into work every morning, I think the big thing for me is I would like to get back to like the game's about the players. It's about the team. You know, I think so much of this has consumed your time, right? And some of the things that are good about our game, I'm just hopeful that we don't lose those things, right? I think the game can teach you a lot about life. There's a ton of intangibles and values that we get an opportunity to teach. I think the game has become a little bit more transactional. Used to be very transformational. You know, I think there's an element to our game that I'm hopeful we can keep, you know, and I think we get to control how we operate at the University of Florida in-house, right? And I think I'm excited about working with this team, if that makes sense. You know, I think this group has done a great job. We've obviously right in the middle of a new off-season program with Coach Fitz, who I assume you're going to ask about at some point. So that's what I would say. I think that I'm hopeful we can at some point here kind of create some guidelines and parameters, and we can kind of move forward and get back to coaching ball. So
Surprised at the NCAA involvement, because I think a while back you basically said you didn't expect anything.
yeah, I mean, I think that all those things will be addressed going forward. You know, we can't get specific right now. Yeah.
Fast.
Brought him into the program. How hand in hand is he working with Jake Sankel, and what have you already seen throughout January?
Yeah, Fitz is special. You know, I mean, I think we're fortunate to have the guy. I think he's obviously very knowledgeable. He's got great experience. He's coached in the National Football League 8 of the last 10 years. He's revived programs, South Carolina, Tennessee, Penn State, well regarded in the space. You know, I think Coach Spurrier, obviously his experience with Fitz in the past, you know, there's a common connection there, not to mention his time with the New York Giants, Tennessee, where we had, you know, Bill O'Brien with Penn State. I mean, there's a number of kind of common connections here. So, you know, and his desire to be at the University of Florida, what I was intrigued with was he was excited about being back at the collegiate level and the connection piece, the opportunity for him to actually be involved in the development of a college player, you know, and the gratification that he gets from that. So we've got great reviews so far from the players. I think ultimately it's about them having belief in what you're doing. He's exceptional. You know, we've hired, you know, Tevin Geddes, Jake Sankel. Jake Sankel is, in my opinion, really unique in his role, right? He's not only the director of nutrition, but he's also one of the assistant strength coaches. So there's an expertise there that I think has been good for our team. His leadership and experience, I mean, he's been eight years with the Commanders, really running that whole operation. So he's bringing a lot to, you know, our systems in terms of how we operate in that space as well. So we got two experts, right? I'm a firm believer that's where the game's headed. I think it's all about, you know, the development piece in terms of the player experience and what you can offer the player, right? So we've tried to really invest in that area. And again, it's about creating the best player experience in the country. You know, I think we've got a unique degree to offer. We've got an incredible alumni network. We've invested in the player development with GatorMade. We've got the development piece with the coaching, and then certainly the strength and conditioning, sports science, nutrition piece. So those two are doing a great job.
To hire another special teams analyst, how much is that going to adequately handle that situation or some of the issues that were on that side of the ball, you think?
No, I think Joe Houston is an outstanding coach, you know, and I think we're not only acquiring an expert in the special team space, but we're getting a guy who has, you know, 4 years with Coach Belichick in that organization, all those meetings, all those things that he's observed, the things that he brings to our staff. You know, I do think that we did well statistically in some areas, but there was no doubt there were some organizational things that could be done better. And I think we added a layer of expertise and another set of eyes, another set of hands there, and ultimately just a big picture viewpoint. So, and we're really, the situational football piece too, we're kind of putting on that umbrella as well with he and Chris working together. So it's good for the Gators. You know, I hired Joe Houston for one day at Louisiana, and then Bill hired him. So, and he's been gone for 4 years, and we were fortunate to get him back.
What is Mark Harkey's new role?
Yeah, so Marco's going to be in the player development space. A lot of our leadership development, character education, a lot of the things that we do relative to learning and teaching. You know, we do a number of tests with the rookies when they arrive, taking all that data and all those assessments and helping the coaches in that space. Also helping me from a messaging standpoint, you know, motivation themes throughout the offseason, throughout the season, things that he's really talented at. And, you know, he's also going to sit in on offensive and defensive meetings. He's going to be a part of the evaluation and recruitment process, and it'll help him as he continues to evolve. So,
Is his title Director of Motivation? Is that
no, player development, yeah.
Fourth most returning production coming up next year. I read that yesterday. More than Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, a lot of your rivals. How critical is this offseason going to be to leverage that and to use that to your advantage? The fact that, you know, you guys are actually coming into next season with a little more experience maybe than you have in the past.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're ultimately the goal for a long time has been to build a veteran team, right? I think ultimately, the playoff is kind of proves that to some degree, right? I think the two teams that played for it had really strong cultures, and I think they also had veteran teams, right? So, you know, it's a process to get to where we want to go. We're right in the middle of that, and part of that is building an experienced roster, that continuity in system, experienced roster, the height, length, and speed to win the matchups. And then, you know, ultimately, I think if we can we got to continue to get better here. We got to grow up. There's got to be some maturity. This offseason will be a part of that. But we're going to start in a much better place. You know, all these guys that played, first-time starters, freshmen, sophomores last year, they start this offseason with a ton of experience and wisdom. So I think that leadership component, too, with the talented group of rookies coming in, I think that's good for the Gators.
Time for a few more guys. Special teams, is that group coordinated by one individual during games, or is that kind of a collective effort from the coaching staff? How do you guys divide that up on game day?
Yeah, no, I think it's, you know, much like we've talked before, majority of that work is done during the week, you know. And I think each year it's a little bit different is what I would say. And we're a long way away from playing a game. So a lot of work to be done between now and then.
Billy, I had a few questions about the guys you signed at his signing day. We talked about Bridges last time. Can you go through the rest of your DB class and just the guys that you added from the portal, but also Grimsley, getting him at cornerback?
Yeah, I think some of the new players would be good to talk about. DJ Douglas is a player that we're excited about, the safety from Tulane. He's impressed so far. You know, he's got a temperament about him. He's a leader. He's a good communicator. They think there's some continuity in the system he played in. And he's an alpha, and he's a worker. His work ethic is impressed so far. And you're 6 foot 205, you know, came from Thompson High School in Alabama, which is a really good football program. And then certainly playing at Tulane for Coach Fritz, there's a ton of respect there in terms of the type of program that they run. So I had a couple of my former players that were on that team that knew DJ, and they spoke highly on his behalf. You know, Grimsley, we all know, is like 6'2" and change. He's like 190 pounds, you know, and he's a two-way player. The guy played receiver as well. But big, long, corner, heavy-handed, ball skills. Was a little bit banged up as a senior, but I think we feel really good about the skill set there. Certainly keeping a player from the state of Florida at home. And Jameer is a Gator, man. He grew up dreaming of playing for the Gators, and we were able to get that done. So who else we got? Asa Turner, yeah. 26 starts, 6'2" and change. I think he was 208. Productive, good tackler, leader on the team, had a voice. I think we really went high character, leadership traits, production in the portal. That was kind of the theme of the year, was like, okay, if we're going to add players at this point in their career, they need to, really be team-oriented, high character, bring some things to the team other than just the production on the field. So I think we've learned that a little bit over time, and I think so far so good in that regard.
About Joey and LJ, can you go through the rest of your D-line guys that you brought in and also the edge players too?
Yeah, I think the new players, George Gums, Gums is 6'4". I think he weighs like 242. Unique story, right? Started as a walk-on, Chicago, Simeon High School. Started as a walk-on receiver, then moved to tight end, and last year made the move to pass rusher, and then, kind of took off and had a great year. So we're getting a 2-year player that's got some traits there, maybe can help us on third down. And I think his best football in terms of being a defensive player is in front of him. So good there. It's good to get Pup Howard back, I thought we were really close, like one phone call away, in the beginning. So, I think Pup walking around here at 6'4", 240, inside backer, and just the intelligence that he brings, the character, the work ethic. I mean, the guy's wired right. He's what you want. So we need more of that, right? We got to keep the good players in our state at home, and it's a good win for us to get him back. Yeah. Yeah, DeAndre's the same way. Grew up a Gator, unique dynamic with the defensive line coach. Felt like we were really close the first time, and then able to get him back, and 6'3", 315 pounds, and lean, twitchy, could play on all 3 downs. I think he's got good things in front of him here, a lot of work to do.
And then lastly, what was the recruitment like with Clay, and how critical was it to get another quarterback?
Yeah, it was a big piece. I think we obviously, especially for the future and spring practice and development of our team, but we're getting a guy who started a whole year, right? He's got a ton of production, got injured last year. Dad played in the National Football League. And just a confident player, and a guy that spins it really well, though, understands football, can communicate, really did a nice job of articulating what his offense was doing. And he's moved the team quite a bit in his career. So I'm excited to watch him. I think he'll continue to get bigger, stronger, too, as he goes.
One last question here, Jacob.
How much does the recruitments of guys like Grimsley and Robinson and Pup maybe speak to the importance of the recruiting process never stopping, and it's okay maybe now to finish second because you have a good relationship with those guys?
No, I mean, I think it's, what you try to do is you just try to do a really good job, in terms of connecting with the kid, the family. We got a great product to sell, right? And I think if we can consistently, more times we get them on campus, the better. It's hard to beat this place and the experience that these guys can have. I think we need to go get some traction on the field, and I think it'll be tough to stop. So I do think it speaks to the job that our people do. We've got fantastic people. Our staff does a great job connecting with people, selling our product. This is a place you can have success as a person, as a student, as a football player. We're going to teach a set of values. We're going to prioritize education. We're going to teach and develop football at the highest level. So, these guys were, they passed the evaluation in the beginning and finished second. You're able to go back and get them. I think it's a good thing, and I'm hopeful that that trend continues.